Jacob, welcome. I'm super excited for this conversation. You are just a special, unique, one of a kind human being that I was very much drawn to online, just based on the way that you show up and speak your truth and own your beliefs and values in such a uh, you know, like welcoming and also like this is me and kind of that attitude of like I don't give a lot of fucks. And you're the kind of person that I just deeply resonate with and feel very drawn to have just deep conversations about all the things. So I'm so excited to go to so many different places with you and just super grateful that you're here.
Yeah, Diara, it's an honor. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to dive deep with you.
So, okay, to get things started, because you, from the outside, from my perspective, from where I stand, you really are in this place of like full acceptance in who you are, what your path looks like. You have so much power in the words that you share and the way that you invite people in to showing up that way within themselves. And for a lot of people, there's been, especially in the last like 5 years or so, there's been somewhat of like a collective awakening that's taken place. And I feel really grateful to be alive at this time in the world. And so my own personal journey, I have a ton of gratitude towards my parents because they were somewhat of the outliers in the 70s and 80s and 90s when I was a kid, and they instilled a lot of these outside the box perspectives outside of the mainstream. So I was raised in that. I don't know if I would be standing where I am today without them. So I'm curious, like, were you raised that way? Did you have somewhat of an awakening moment? Like, take me back to maybe some of like your earlier days and like what that path looked like to bring you to this place today.
I grew up in the Christian church.
Wasn't expecting that.
Yeah. I went to a Christian Catholic school up until eighth grade, and my parents were pretty much the opposite of what yours seemed to be.
Mm,
So I was, and don't get me wrong, I had extremely loving parents. They loved me a lot, but they had a lot of strong convictions, specifically around their faith. And they were so strong that if I rebelled against them, so to speak, I would get shamed.
mm,
I would get backlash. I would, receive treatment that wasn't kind. And, they're just doing their best with what they believed was good for me to have a good, faithful upbringing. But it led me this being in this intense church environment around systems that I didn't necessarily agree with. It led me to an insatiable curiosity about myself, about spirituality, about leadership, about the art of influencing people. How does this great master like Jesus, Yeshua, how did he come to influence generations to come? Was he the only son of God, or was there more to the story? Right? So it's funny how our problems can be transformed into our purpose,
mm,
and how our mess can be transformed into our message, and my crisis became my creative opportunity.
mm,
So in that way, I had the perfect environment that suited my soul's evolution for coming to this planet, because I was in an environment where I was challenged for thinking a certain way. And that led me to going even deeper to learning how I truly want to think, feel, and behave in the world.
mm. Yeah, it's so fascinating to me how we can come from like opposite ends of the spectrum and ultimately end up in the same place and carry, I've watched so much of your content and I believe wholeheartedly with so many of the things that you speak and share. And so it is so interesting when there's a little bit or a lot of resistance that takes place. And because of that resistance, it ultimately forces you to go inward and start asking questions because it just deeply does not resonate with who you are inside. Was that like a felt sense for you at a really young age, or did that shift as you got older? Like, at what moment did you feel like, oh no, this is me, and I fully believe that this is like who I came here to be, and I'm going all in on this?
Such a great question. I've had so many what I call destiny moments, like moments that, really shake you to the core, and all that's left is like this, what identity do I want to choose? Who do I want to be in the world? So to answer your question, I don't think there was one destiny moment. I think it was a series of moments that have compounded and allowed me to mold myself into the man and person and being that I truly wanted to be. Like I think we really have two choices. And I mean, there's a third, which is a neutral choice, but like, does this way of life, does this thinking, does this habit empower me or does it disempower me? And for me, it just became very simple that the most successful humans on the planet, and not just successful materially, but successful in their spirit, successful in their heart, successful in their relationships, they chose a path of empowerment versus disempowerment,
Mm.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost that, that somewhat cliche saying of like hard now or hard later. You can continue on that path of like, oh, make the easy choice now. And the easy choice could be anything like, eating food that isn't necessarily nourishing your body, or choosing to have a few more cocktails that like disconnects you from who you truly are inside. But the compound of that over time builds and builds. And then one day you wake up and you're so completely out of alignment or disconnected from who you truly are inside. And it can be much more difficult to connect the dots and bring things back into harmony. So, yeah, that choice of like hard now, leaning into that, that empowered state, waking up early and moving your body, or cooking a meal that takes a little bit longer. There are all of these little choices along the way where we get to choose. And it's not always the easy choice.
Yeah, our decisions compounded over time shape our destiny. Period.
Yeah.
That's 100% fact.
I would love to know from you, because my audience is, it's somewhat mixed. It's a lot of people that are very connected to this lifestyle and this way of living. And also, it is, the person that is just starting to dip their toes in the water, that's just starting to become curious because they're starting to feel unhappy, unfulfilled, a lack of purpose. And so they're just starting to question things. How would you recommend someone that's like just starting to somewhat like turn the page in their own life, but is curious and maybe like wants to go all in, but there's a fear there of leaning all the way in? Like, what would be and maybe this was your path in the beginning, like, what would you recommend to that person to kind of like get started on this journey?
It's my belief that knowledge applied to your life is the antidote to all fear. What I mean is, become a learning machine. If there's a reason you're not feeling purposeful in your life, it's because you haven't yet acquired the knowledge or surrounded yourself with people who are living their purpose. If you're unhealthy, it's because you haven't acquired the knowledge and applied that knowledge of the habits that lead to health. If you're stuck in mediocre relationships or trauma-based relationships, it's because you haven't been around people or acquired the knowledge and systems to hold yourself to a higher standard. So you do attract better relationships. So if the way we think and the way we feel and the way we behave, if that all creates our personal reality of life, that means I have to upgrade how I'm currently thinking. I have to upgrade the way I'm behaving, the habits that I'm living by, and I have to do my best to live by different emotions that are empowering me. Not all the time, all emotions are beautiful, but there are emotions like gratitude and abundance and celebration and joy that we can learn to cultivate. So I have to train my body and mind essentially to live by different emotions. So I can learn how to think and how to feel differently and how to behave differently by reading books. Or if you're not a fan of reading, you can listen to an amazing podcast like this one we're doing right now. So you can get around people's the way they think and what they do in the world. And I would just look for your listeners, I would just look to anyone who inspires you. It can be Diara, it can be Jacob, it can be anyone. And I would surround myself with their content, with their books, with their courses, and just start implementing how they think, how they feel, what their habits are, how they behave, what actions do they take, and essentially model them. Don't mimic them, model them. I'm a huge believer in, I've had mentors since I was 20 years old, and I've modeled what they've taught me. I haven't copied what they've taught me. I've modeled what they've taught me and then ran it through my own synthesis, my own life experiences, my own way of being, my own unique flavor, and then applied that to my life. And that very simply is why I have the results I do in my health, in my wealth, in my relationships, in my overall happiness and fulfillment. I just modeled what successful people do.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, that's powerful. And do you have, I'm guessing you likely do you have a few or a handful of like non-negotiables in your daily life, whether that's your routines or your habits or your choices, like how you wake up in the morning, how you go to sleep at night? Because I think there's so much information out there. And I think for some people it can feel a little bit overwhelming. I love your take on like lean into the people that you feel inspired by and model that and bring that into existence within yourself. So I would love to know from you, like, are there any specific habits or routines that are non-negotiable for you every day or every week that really do kind of add to that level of like purpose, joy, fulfillment that you have created in your life?
Totally. For your listeners, you guys can write down your rituals equal your results.
Mm.
I mean, it's that simple. Again, if we go back to if my rituals empower me, do that every day consistently enough for a long enough period of time, and my life will be empowered. Same thing with disempowering. So to answer your question, I wake up at 4:30 almost every day.
Mm.
And I get that's not for most people. I also have a son in an agreement with my wife that I have Jacob time 4:30 to 7, and then I take the baby from 7 to 9 to give my wife that free time. So in those morning hours, I am getting clear on like what are my priorities for the day. I have my own planning system that I released. It's public. It's called the Living Leadership Planner. And essentially, I'm just really focusing my mind on this is what I'm going to get done today. And from there, I read. It's pretty boring, Diara. I read for 45 minutes with my cup of coffee. I do a cold plunge.
Mm.
Sometimes it's just like a face plunge where I dunk my face in some ice water. Other times it's a whole body cold plunge, just depending on the day. And after I cold plunge, after I read my book, after I fill out my planner, I ride my bike to the gym and I'm either working out my body or I'm going in the sauna and doing a meditation. So I switch every day, body workout, and then say that's Monday. Tuesday is then I do a Dr. Joe Dispenza meditation. For if your audience is familiar, yeah, Dispenza. I'm a huge fan of Dispenza stuff. Tuesday I do sauna and meditation. Wednesday workout. Thursday sauna meditation, et cetera, et cetera. That repeats every single day of the week.
Mm.
And then I come home and do a few little things here and there to get ready for work. And then I'm with my baby for 2 hours where I get to love him and be present with him until it's mama time.
Hmm. I love that. And that is a perfect transition into fatherhood because you have two sons or you have one?
I have one biological son, one bonus son.
Got it. Okay. And you seem on the outside to like have fully embraced this role and this, season of life, which is being a father. And it is so inspiring and beautiful to me as a woman to see another man that shows up that way, that, has created a lot of success around business and so many other aspects of your life. And being a father, though, correct me if I'm wrong, seems to be like a top priority for you that you have fully embraced and leaned in all the way. And I would love to hear from you. I have so many questions around this, but like as a starting point, what have you learned about yourself or what's like been the biggest lesson that you've learned about yourself since becoming a father? I know that's a big one. That's a big question.
Oh man. I guess if I can intellectualize a lesson and then I'd like to go deeper into the feeling of it. But as an overview, we are not here to teach children things. We are here to remember how to be children.
Mm,
And yeah, I can cry just contemplating that. Um, DRI, everything. So me and my wife had a home birth,
mm,
and we did it in my wife's room over there. And uh, the moment I saw him come out, uh, you're not a mother, right?
I am. I have a 5-year-old
You are.
daughter. Yeah. Hmm.
Well, then you know. I mean, it's a complete, especially for mama, a complete biological, psychological, spiritual upgrade like that. And I guess if I could summarize it, it's such a undescribable heart chakra opening that you can only understand when you have a child. And it's such a there is nothing literally in this world that I would not do to protect you, to love you, to keep you safe, to provide for you, to make you feel like you are the most loved and cherished and beautiful organism ever to walk this earth. So I think to answer your question, besides like remembering that they are here to teach us more than we are here to teach them, it's the how hungry it made me. And not hungry like physical hungry, how much hunger even more it brought out of my soul.
Mm,
Hunger to be the very best possible version of me, continuously, never endingly, for the rest of my life, for him,
mm,
for his kids, for the next generation after that. Like that's what opened in me, Diara, is this I'm going to leave you not just financial resources to take care of you and your family for the rest of your life. We're going to leave you values and principles and standards and just a way to be a really good fucking human and serve the collective. So it's a bit of a mouthful, but
mm.
that's what it awakened.
Yeah, you're making me emotional as you're speaking because you're able to articulate a feeling and a sensation that is really difficult to put into words when you become a parent. And I'm such a believer that it's why we're all here. It truly is. The lessons and the things that you learn about yourself, the mirror that your child is able to hold up in front of you so that you can take a look at the way that you are living and showing up and speaking and behaving. there's nothing like it on this planet. And yeah, you talk that hunger that you speak about, that level of drive and motivation to be the best version of yourself so that you pass this down. You know, for me, it's breaking generational cycles. It's making sure that I speak, I use my voice, that I feel all the feelings, that I stop avoiding or abandoning or numbing the parts of myself that I once believed were unlovable. Like there's so much within all of that that takes place that only a child could bring to the surface because they are that reflection of who you are. And that I'm sure you agree with this. You look at your child and they're just this perfect little being that they're like, there are no flaws. There is nothing wrong with a beautiful little child. And how, for me anyway, especially as a woman, because there is so much pressure on little girls and then women to look, act, and behave a certain way. I know that the same exists for men in, you know, a different sense. But for me to make sure that like my daughter does not, as much as I possibly can, does not lose sight in that, you know, because the world is going to tell her that she's not enough. And how can I make sure that she sees herself the way that I see her? And what am I able to model or emulate to be able to pass that down to her? And the only way that I can truly do that is if I model that within myself. And so, how do I show up that way in my own life to make sure that she grows carrying those same beliefs? And so, from your standpoint, like what, as you speak about like values that you want to pass down to your son, like I would love to know like what are some of those values for you?
Yeah, first, I just want to say that from the looks of it, you're doing a stupendous job being a mother and leading by example for your daughter. So thanks for being one of the rare ones.
Mm-hmm.
Values, emotional intelligence, critical thinking.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm being honest, uh, I think a lot of public schools are a total sham. And that's not to shame any parents who send their kids to a public school. My bonus son is in a public school, not by my choosing, but that's a different conversation. Um, I said that after critical thinking because public schools don't teach critical thinking. They teach children how to memorize things,
Yeah.
frankly, pointless things,
Yeah.
unless you're going to be a mathematician or something along those lines. So emotional intelligence, critical thinking, being kind,
Mm.
like being a loving, safe presence for people, for men and women and everybody in between. Definitely financial certainty,
Mm.
financial stability, financial freedom, just understanding how money works, understanding what money is. It's really an energy game. And then you pair that with strategy, and over time, you can create incredible, incredible wealth. So teaching them the fundamentals of wealth accumulation. Um, Allowing them to be their full creative selves.
Mm.
Another reason I'm not a fan of public schooling, and we'll either homeschool or hopefully go to a Waldorf school or a Montessori school, something in that nature. And we just want to make sure their main, our children's main source of learning is play.
Mm.
Because in play, they're working all sides of their brain. They're literally building the neurological faculties to be their most creative self. So play is a huge value you want to pass on. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, those, you're speaking my language. Those are the same for me. And it's so interesting because, and I'm sure you were probably raised this way as well. It's like when you live your life down the traditional education path, you know, I went to a really good school and had, you know, the highest level of education, went and felt like these are the boxes that you check. You know, you go to college, you get a good job, um, you find a good man, you start a family, you get married, you have the house, you have all the things. And I followed that path. I did all of those things. I was, you know, quote unquote, the good girl, got good grades and did all, you know. And then I woke up one day and felt so disconnected and could not figure out why I was so unhappy and unfulfilled. And felt, as I was going through my own awakening, felt very lied to. And I had parents, as I described, I had parents that very much were outside of the system. They, you know, raised me to think critically and to question the status quo and to, you know, uh, live life my way. And even still, because the indoctrination was so deep in my nervous system from such a young age, I had a really difficult time grieving that part of myself and letting that part of myself die, which ultimately needed to happen. And, you know, it's been the last like 5 years of this journey that I've been on where now I'm a single mom and I have you know, have so much gratitude towards all of the mess and all of the hard that I had to go through because it had to happen in order to bring me here. And now, though, I get to pass something different on to my child. And she's 5.5 now. And I know that this is, you know, controversial, but she's never been vaccinated. She is not going to go down the public school path or any traditional educational path. And the amount of people that come up to me constantly and express how intelligent she is and how aware she is and how emotionally intelligent she is and her depth of vocabulary. Like there's so many examples because of those values that you described that she does play all the time. And she still is so smart and she has all of the tools and the knowledge and the awareness that any other child who's, you know, been in a traditional education system from age 2 or 3, and I would even argue that she's way more connected to herself and to her emotions and further along in a lot of ways. And so, yeah, just everything that you're expressing is, and I also, you know that this is a luxury in a lot of ways, that this is a privilege for myself to be able to choose this path. I have help. My parents help a ton, and we have support to choose something different. Not everybody has that luxury. And so I just want to acknowledge that that is a privilege. And also, though, for anybody that is starting to question whether or not that traditional path is right for their child, to start having conversations with people that are choosing different, like you and and to open their eyes to what's possible. Because I really did I don't know if you felt any of this, but I really did have to grieve a lot of that because I felt like, am I robbing her of some of these? Because there are some beautiful moments that exist, you know, the community and the friendships and, you know, just prom or all the you know, the different things that are like, there is beauty in it as well. It's not all terrible and bad. But I'm curious if like you experienced any of that or if you felt this very just strong sense like, I'm going to choose something different right away.
Hmm. I don't remember grieving
Mm.
what could have been. I just remember being so fed up, and that fed upness was like the leverage that I needed to catapult me into self-discovery.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Did that, because you also spoke about your wife had a home birth and I did as well. And the beauty that exists within that and how natural it is and how our bodies just know what to do. Not to say it isn't the most challenging, difficult moment of a woman's life, because it absolutely was for me. And even still, though, it just felt like this is the way. And there is so much fear because for such a long time we've been told that pregnancy is somewhat of a illness and you have to go to a doctor and you have to get ultrasounds and you have to be in a hospital and you have to be hooked up to all of these machines. And so the idea of doing it differently can feel really big for
Mhm.
somebody. That's because, again, like a big chunk of my audience are people, men and women, that are like just starting to dip their toes in all of this. Was that path like a no-brainer for you and your wife, or did you have conversations with other people? Like what would you recommend for somebody that's like, curious about choosing a different path and maybe doing things more naturally through pregnancy and giving birth?
You are a great interviewer.
Thank you. Thank you.
I want to back up a second
Yeah.
because something came through about your previous question.
Mm,
I had to grieve, Diara, being liked by the masses.
mm,
That was a huge thing for me, is I had to accept that if I am going to publicly display myself as this person with these radical views, radical by the mainstream's vantage point, that a lot of people, including a lot of my friends at the time, looked at me like I was a lunatic.
mm,
And frankly, I am a lunatic compared to the masses. So yeah, I just wanted to publicly state that it was a huge grieving process to me to let go of a lot of people I loved. I had a falling out with my parents for, golly, at least a year and a half. I did not speak to my parents at all, which was
mm,
its own metamorphosis in itself. So
mm,
definitely had to grieve. That came through after I mentioned that.
mm,
So birth, again, it comes back to what I had mentioned before, is knowledge. You look at hospitals are what, 150-year-old thing? Like we didn't have hospitals until 150 years ago, maybe 200 years ago at the absolute most. How did women give birth? Through all of history. They gave birth with other women, midwives, doulas. I mean, this has been around since the dawn of humanity. So it comes back to, yes, this knowledge has been kind of uh, it's been stripped away intentionally
mm,
by the Rockefellers, by men who don't want women to remember their true power. So yes, it's a little bit harder to find the the true power of a woman's body, giving birth and water, all the things, but it's out there. You have access to the World Wide Web. We have AI now. So to ask your question again,
mm.
if you remember
Yeah, I not specifically the exact words, but I'm just would love to know like what your journey looked like to feel so safe and secure and comfortable in choosing that path, that natural path. Like, was your wife
sure, sure.
did she have a big role in that? Like, was she kind of leading you towards it? Were you leading her towards it? Was this like many conversations over a long time and you just
My wife
always
gets all the
knew?
credit.
Yeah.
She gets all the credit.
Mm,
My wife is a fucking genius.
mm,
She was a doula for 10 years.
mm,
Uh, I mean, throughout her pregnancy, she was doing hypno babies. For those
mm,
mothers who don't know, hypno babies is you're essentially putting yourself under hypnosis to have an incredible, orgasmic, beautiful birth. So she did all the work.
mm,
She prepared to have a blissful birth, and it was. No doubt some parts were challenging, but overall, my wife has had two orgasmic births.
mm,
It's incredible. So she really took me along for the ride. She had me watch documentaries about water births, about giving birth with dolphins in Hawaii,
mm,
about, all she dove me into the world. And it was really beautiful for me because I came from a very ill childhood. I had so many vaccines pumped into me. We can talk about vaccines too, DR, if you want to go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah, let's do it.
Uh, I had so many vaccines pumped into me because I got allergy shots. So
Mm,
I had all the vaccines at birth, and then I got allergy shots as a teenager.
Mm,
because every time I went outside, I would break into a frenzy of hives and, get red bumps all over my body.
mm,
So she, having a knowledge of how corrupt that the pharmacological world is. What I didn't have the knowledge of is how corrupt it's become for mothers and birthing in a hospital with unnatural lighting, surrounded by humans who you don't feel safe with. Like it's the antithesis of a safe birthing environment. And of course you can make it safer by many means, but generally speaking, like a woman should be only surrounded by either other women or her husband or just people that she trusts in really low light settings and have all her water and her favorite foods by her and maybe some beautiful music playing. The environment is so sacred. And my wife taught me how demonized childbirth has become by the masses. And she taught me how truly beautiful it's meant to be.
mm,
And not just taught me, she demonstrated that through the whole birth process and had me read so many different books about birth and how to be a safe pillar for her in the childbirth. And we practiced exercises, how to hold her hips, went through the whole process. So I really have to give all the credit to my wife for enlightening me
mm,
in the world of natural childbirth.
mm. That's super inspiring to hear and just empowering for women that we do hold that power and it is a choice and there is a ton of access to information as you speak of knowledge and there being so much power that exists within that. Because I think once you go down that rabbit hole, it's really, really difficult. It's impossible to see things any differently once you go pretty deep into that. So I would love, because I love the taboo, controversial topics. And I know that this is definitely a big one. And honestly, with the madness that did exist in the last, however many years with, when COVID came, to the surface, I actually have a lot of gratitude for it because for the first time in a really long time, people were opening their eyes to the dangers of the poisons that we're shooting up into our human body and especially into a brand new newborn baby when they've only been in existence for a few minutes on Earth.
Ah.
And so because, again, my parents, super grateful to them because I was not vaccinated as a child. I was born at home. So my daughter is like a second generation that I'm able to pass this on to her. And so I mean, there's so many places that we could go down this path, but was your wife a big player in opening your eyes to this? Was this something that you like were curious
Vaccines.
about? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
First, before I get it, I just want to give a gold nugget for the moms listening to this, or maybe soon to be moms. Diara, who's a midwife or a really powerful mom that you know,
Mm.
or someone who's taught about natural childbirth?
Yeah, I mean, nobody really like well known or famous, but like the women that were in my corner when I gave birth, those women played like a really, and I was living in Los Angeles at the time, but those women specifically played a really big role in that. And honestly, my own mom, I have to give. I have to give everything to her because I was raised with that value system and that belief that this is not only possible for me, this is normal.
Right.
And so many women are not raised with that belief system. So I think we have to seek them out. We have to find, as you speak about, finding somebody that you look up to, you're inspired by. We have to seek that out in our own life in or if we have this like intuitive sense, like we want to choose a different path.
So here's what moms can do. You can go on ChatGPT. For the people aren't familiar, ChatGPT is probably the most popular artificial intelligence in the world. You can go to ChatGPT right now, and this is how like you let AI supercharge you and your business. Like you'd say, uh, hey, I need you to be Iva May the most legendary midwife in the world. I may be saying her name wrong. Iva, doesn't matter. I need you to be share the most powerful midwifery practices with me to give birth naturally. I
Mm.
need you to break down the exact strategy of how to do that. I need you to tell me how to prepare our space. I need you to tell me what herbs I should be taking. You just give it the exact instructions you want, and you can have this very, dare I say, powerful intelligence create a whole map and strategy for you based on the most powerful women ever to talk about midwifery. And you can have it break down everything for you. So just going back to the knowledge thing, like moms, you can use AI to help you come up with a plan that is extremely legitimate to give birth naturally outside of the hospital.
Mm. I love that. And just to like add,
Incredible.
just to add a little bit more to that, if you've been using ChatGPT and they know you, you can cater that
Yep.
specifically to your life and your lifestyle so that it is very specific and does feel extremely resonant with your version, your flavor of life, because that's like an important piece as well. Like down to the like super specifics of like, please create a playlist for me specifically based on the music that I enjoy. And you really can. Yeah, I love that's such a beautiful, powerful tip that I do plan to have more children and that I'm absolutely going to utilize moving forward because it is such a beautiful, powerful tool that we all have
It's
access
so
to.
powerful. It's people have no idea how powerful it is, Diara. Like what you can do. I had this, and then we'll move on to vaccines. But just real quick, I had this. One of my mentors shared this prompt with me. He said, "I want you to talk to ChatGPT for 10 minutes or 20 minutes and share everything you can about your business, about your belief systems, about your lifestyle, about your marriage. Like give it all the details possible, and then ask it to give you the top 25 blind spots that you may have in your life, and then rank those blind spots in order of importance to address immediately." And I did that, Diara, and it was almost eerie how not just accurate, but empowering it was to see, oh, these are the potential things that I may not be aware of, that I could be aware of to take my life to the next level. What?
Yeah.
It's remarkable. Anyway, so we'll get off the AI bandwagon.
No, I love that. That's, I just, even just to sit with that for a moment, because it's why we thrive in community, because people, especially close community, where our support system are they're able to see things within us that we aren't able to see on our own. It's why the work that I do, the work that you do is so impactful and is so life-changing because we are able to hold up that mirror. And even still though, in a human form, there's still going to be, feelings or emotions. We're going to want to like maybe tiptoe or sugarcoat things a little bit because we don't want to be too forward. We don't want to be, come across too strong. Whereas in this sense, it's like you can't take anything personally. This isn't your friend or your brother, your mom giving you this feedback. This is an external force
Yep.
that is providing this information to you and, take it or leave it, but you get to then put action into place. So I just really wanted to kind of like sink into that a little bit because that is a very, very powerful tip that I'm absolutely going to walk away with and utilize. But yes, let's dive into vaccines. And maybe because this is it feels like you and I have a very deep level of awareness and knowledge and I'm guessing you've likely gone to the depths that I've gone and you've watched the documentaries and you listen to the podcast and you have the information. And for somebody that is that can be very overwhelming and there's a lot of fear there, and especially because I've had conversations with women and moms that have followed that path because that's the only path that they knew and they were doing the best they could with the knowledge that they were given and they trusted their doctor. And then, their child had an adverse reaction. I've had many conversations with mothers and women that are now in that place, and there's a lot of guilt and there's a lot of shame there. And so I just like me personally, I do my best to be as conscious as I possibly can with like how I communicate about this, because I never want to come across with like I'm up here on this pedestal, I have all of this information and like you're wrong. Um, so with all of that said, like what advice would you give to somebody, and maybe you've already, had these types of conversations, for somebody that is like just starting to open their eyes, that is just starting to question, like what like what is a good place for someone like that to start?
May I ask your audience some questions?
Hmm. Please.
So, DR's audience, do pharmaceutical drugs ever get to the source of your disease, or do they just mask it?
Hmm.
What would you say, DR? Actually, will you answer too?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, they're a band-aid.
They're a band-aid. Okay. I think most people listening would agree.
Yeah.
Have pharmaceutical companies, more than any other company on the planet, paid billions and billions and billions in adverse side effects fines?
Hmm. Uh, Sorry, just to make sure I understand that question. Paid billions in advertising or in,
Paid, yeah, sorry, that wasn't clear. Let me approach the question differently. Does the pharmaceutical industry profit from your sickness?
yes.
So if these pharmacological compounds aren't getting to the source and they're only a band-aid, do these pharmacological compounds also have deterring effects on your body?
Hmm. Yes.
Yes. Okay, so we know these compounds have negative effects on the body long term. We know they never get to the source. And we know that historically, the pharmaceutical industry is the most corrupt industry on the planet because they do profit from your sickness. There's a reason there's one of every three commercials is a pharmaceutical commercial in the United States. We also know that, well, let me ask you this question for you and your audience. Are pharmaceutical companies responsible for deaths of people using their products?
They're not liable.
They're not
That's what you
liable,
mean?
correct.
Yeah.
So they're not liable for death. They they make us sicker, and they are the only organization in the world that profits from our sickness. So those are, if you ask me, a few really big red flags right there
Yeah.
to start critically thinking about. So now let's talk about vaccines. I guarantee nobody listening to this podcast can list all of the ingredients in the shots that they are giving to their children.
Hmm.
So, and I imagine a lot of your listeners are health conscious, at least starting to be,
Yeah.
and they will look at ingredient labels
Yeah.
for right?
Yeah.
So you don't get an ingredient label when you get shots. The child is born and they get pumped full of unknown ingredients that you have no idea what they are. No idea. Let's not even talk about them. We had more autistic children than ever before in history, like times 1,000. Now, autism can be a superpower, but I digress. The point is, if people stop to think about what these organizations actually are and what they do, it's not hard to trace back to, okay, we're putting unknown ingredients from the most corrupt organizations that profit from our sickness into our body and our children's bodies. And then for whatever reason, our children have puffy eyes and they're just not as cognitively clear. They're not as emotionally aware. Just like you said, DR, I've seen it in my son. Everybody is so surprised that he's so bright and so full of light and love, and it's how children should be.
Yeah.
Children were meant to shine.
Yeah.
And I know this may sound harsh, but I've seen children who've been on the full CDC schedule, and they are just not as vibrant.
Yeah.
And that's not a judgment, it's an observation.
Yeah.
So for me, it's really not hard when you just kind of follow the cookie trail, follow the money, and you'll find that there's stuff in these shots that you do not want in you or your child's body.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm super grateful for just the way in which you communicate that because it it's just coming from a place of curiosity. It's
Yes.
not my path has to be your path. It is just a deep sense of what feels, and again, this comes back to like we're raised to be disconnected from our body, from our voice, from our heart, from our truth. And when you slow down enough to connect back into your heart, to your intuition, to what feels right for you, the things that are the things that do nourish your mind, body, soul, spirit, which is whatever that is, all of the above, movement, food, sunlight, nature, community, family, all of those things, they just carry this deep resonance of like, this is the way I'm meant to be living. And so I do my best to approach this conversation in that same way of like, is there a part of you that just, especially as a mom, is there a part of you that just feels like, I don't know, this doesn't sit right with me? And what is that? And just starting in that place of getting curious. You don't have to go all the way down the rabbit hole right away. That may feel a little bit overwhelming or scary knowing where to begin. But yeah, exactly as you said, if you're reading the ingredients label on something you pick up at the grocery store, you should do the exact same for everything that you put into your body. And so, yeah, I just thank you for just the way that you communicated that and just the approach that you have. I think it's really powerful. I think you're able to meet people, more people in that from approaching it with asking questions because that's much easier
Totally.
to be received.
In
Uh,
that we can't influence people unless we know what already influences them, right? If someone is coming with a curiosity about vaccines, then you already know that there's a way in. And
mm,
the way you get into people is you help them come back to their own inner gnosis.
yeah,
So questions, you don't tell people what to think, you ask them questions so they can come back to their own inner knowing.
yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. And it's coming from a place of love and care for humanity and wanting our children to thrive and be the beautiful light beings that they are, that they came here to be. And so I want to, with all that, I want to switch gears slightly because to me, from the outside, you emulate a beautiful level of depth and connection and intimacy within your marriage and within your relationship with your wife. And that unfortunately feels rare. And I now am in a place because I've learned a lot of lessons. And again, I have gratitude for those lessons now where I stand today. They had to happen and exist the way that they did. And also, though, I would do things so differently the next time around. And so, for people listening that also crave those deep levels of intimacy and connection and passion, especially after they have children, because things do naturally shift once a child is welcomed into the world. Do you have any, I believe that I watched a video of you talking about like intimacy ritual that you and your wife do, and maybe you have a few, but like what advice would you give somebody that is craving that level of connection in their relationship, especially somebody that's like been in a long-term relationship. Actually, I mean, you could really speak to anybody that's, craving that maybe isn't in a relationship. Like, how could they do that work on themselves? And then for the people that are in relationships, like, what are some of the tools that you have or the rituals that you have brought into your life?
Speaking to the couples first, before you can go into, fun, sexy rituals, you got to get back to the fundamentals.
Hmm.
And what I mean by that is the reason relationships, especially after years or even decades, go sour, so to speak, or become less passionate is because they stop pursuing each other. If relationships continue to pursue each other the way they did in the beginning, like they did in the beginning, there would be ongoing passion and intimacy and the spark in the relationship. So, said differently, get back to the fundamentals. Get back to courting your spouse. Get back to going on dates every single week, no exceptions. Like dates with your man or woman should be a non-negotiable every week. Me and my wife every Thursday. Today, after this call, I have one more client, and then her and I are going on a date from 4 to 7. No kids. And we do that every single Thursday. And if we have sex, fuck yes. If we don't, great. Don't make dates about sex, make it about connection. And if sex happens or intimacy happens, that's a bonus.
Hmm.
Yeah. So a ritual so first you got to get the fundamentals down. Start with weekly dates, start with, flirting with each other again, start with randomly going up to your wife and grabbing her butt and kissing her passionately. There's so many little things you can do to flirt again with your spouse. And just remember, if you haven't flexed that muscle in a while, just just like going to the gym, you have to, it's maybe painful the first 2 weeks, but after the third week, fourth week, fifth week, you start building that muscle again, and all of a sudden it's really natural to flirt with your wife, to make out in public, to, whatever it is your thing. Just remember it's a muscle that you can build again. Okay. So, do you want me to go into rituals?
Yeah, I'd love to hear one of them.
Okay. So really simple. And me and my wife do this often for our date nights. We will just take the kids out of the house, have the babysitter take them, and then we will set up one of our fur rugs on the bedroom floor, and we'll sit across from each other, and we have a notepad with us. And we did this last week, and we write down what is one thing that we are manifesting individuals, one thing we are manifesting as a couple,
Hmm.
like manifesting within our relationship, and then one thing we want to manifest for the world. So ourselves, our relationship, and for the world. And then we'll write that down, and then we'll read it to each other, and then we'll burn it.
Mm.
So we'll have a little burn bowl in front of us, and then we'll read it, and then we'll burn it. And then from there, usually I just take her onto my lap. She wraps her legs around me, and we'll either do some eye gazing for a minute or two, or more often than not, just deep breathing together. So just we'll hug and hold with her legs around me, and we'll just hold each other and breathe. Usually naked, sometimes not, but just really close skin to skin contact as much as possible while breathing together.
Mm.
And from there, if it feels like we can be intimate, or like that's something we both want, then we'll be intimate right then and there. Other times, we have our relationship card game that we bought on Amazon. It's nothing special. And we'll play our relationship card game. And sometimes we'll have a glass of wine, sometimes we'll have some cacao, sometimes a combination of both, and maybe some tea sometimes also. And we just make it about connection.
Mm.
So we're in like this own little fur rug, and it's like our own little ecosystem. And we're just connecting there, laying on the floor, playing cards, making love, whatever it is. It's just that's our time to do that.
Mm.
That's that's the ritual.
Yeah, I love that. It to me, like what's coming up as you're speaking to this is just the sacredness of the union that you have together and making sure that that is your priority.
Yep.
Yes, life pulls you, tugs you in a million different ways. You have a business, you have a child, like you have other responsibilities, absolutely. But making sure I noticed, and I have so many conversations that like because we become so comfort and content with our partner and in our relationships, especially long-term relationships, that that falls to the end of the list. And we sacrifice that piece when if all you did was put that at the top of the list and yes, make sure that that commitment stays on your calendar every week, how everything else in your life, just the ripple effect that that can have on everything else in your life. So, yeah, thank you for sharing that ritual. That is extremely powerful.
I like to call that the law of familiarity. Like you become so familiar with your partner that you stop pursuing them. And the way to get back to building that muscle again is just go on dates
Yeah.
every week. And then you'll watch, like me and my wife, we haven't, and well, I guess I'll share this with your listeners, whatever. One of our dates like 2, 3 weeks ago, we went into a nature hike and had totally unplanned, beautiful nature sex on top of a mountain. And it was the best.
I bet.
And that's, that the first few dates, especially after baby, were weird.
Mm,
I mean, I know being a mom. I don't know if you were single after you had your daughter, but golly, it's weird to be away from your child the first few times.
yeah.
And we had to, again, build that muscle of dating again. And it took 3, 4, 5 dates to get back into the rhythm of, oh, yeah, it feels delicious again
Mm.
to be alone, to be intimate, to be away from baby. I think me and my wife only made love, honestly, no more than 2 times the first year of his life.
Mm.
We didn't start dating again until after the first year.
Mm. Yeah, I appreciate you speaking that out loud because the importance of normalizing the shifts that do come and just allowing that to be okay. I
Yes.
think that that's a really, really important piece. And again, I love what you said, just back to coming from a place of curiosity within your relationship as well. Like we stop asking our partner questions. We stop getting to know them because we think we know everything about them, but we change and we shift and we grow and we evolve. And if only we approach things with like, I just really want to get to know you again because I know you've changed, especially after you have a child and asking more questions. What a beautiful, like deeper level of connection and intimacy that would bring. So I love everything you shared. And also I feel like I could talk to you about so many different things and we could go on and on forever, but I would love to kind of like bring this full circle. I would love to kind of end with a question that feels just very top of mind for me with so many of the conversations that I have with not only women but men as well. And I think we're living in a generation where, um, in a beautiful sense, we have way more opportunity as far as like the path that we're going to follow for our career or our job, the way that we spend our time. We're able to create income through our passions. And it can be a blessing and a curse also, though, because there are so many options now. I think there's a lot of added pressure on even like the younger generation of like, I feel so unfulfilled in my job, or I feel so unfulfilled in my career, or in my relationship. I feel so disconnected from my partner. So for somebody listening that's feeling lost, scared of the future, unfulfilled in their relationships or in many different areas of their life, what advice would you give that person of like how to essentially like make a big change or make a big take a step in the direction towards living a life that feels on purpose and in alignment?
I will repeat myself because it bears repeating.
Mm,
Become a learning machine.
mm,
Make your self growth your highest priority and only focus on one area of life at a time. So if you're not healthy right now, that's what I would focus on first.
Mm.
Read all the books you can. Commit to yourself right now that you're going to go to the gym 5 days a week, or you're going to do yoga or dance or whatever it is for you. You're going to eat healthy. Like, commit to going all in on that one area of life. Learn everything you can about that area. And then when you have some momentum in that area, go on to the next area of life you want to improve. Maybe for you, that's money. So follow billionaire pages on Instagram. Follow multimillionaires. Read their books. Just engross yourself in as much as possible in the area of life that you want to improve. And it is literal physics that with time and with action, that area of life will be improved for you.
Good stuff. Jacob, thank you so, so much. There's so much here. I'm super grateful for the way that you show up and for your voice and just being a leader in like, it's such a cliche word at this point, but you have a very strong masculine energy and it's needed, especially being like a committed, devoted husband and father. It's beautiful to witness that in you, especially as you being a leader for so many people and just a powerful voice out in the world. I'm super grateful for the way that you show up, and I just want to acknowledge all of that in you. And also, where can people find you? What's the best place to connect with you, to follow along your journey? And anybody that like wants to get more from you.
Dear, I could have done this interview for 3 more hours.
Hmm.
Just FYI, this was really wonderful. Great questions too.
Hmm.
You can find me on Instagram. That's my main channel, at Jacob Loves Being Alive. I'm sure Diara will tag it in the show comments. Also, jacobmetzger.co. And I have a whole bunch of products and services for you for whoever wants to go deeper with me.
Amazing. Thank you so much for doing this with me.